Hello, you guys. Happy New Year. It is wild to me that in a few days it is going to be 2026. I cannot believe that. 2025 was a great year of reading for me. I read so much more than I did in 2024, and I discovered the library. I got a Kindle. It was really a great year. I had very few books that I actually disliked. These are the books that really hold a special place in my heart from 2025, my favorite reads. Here are my favorite books from 2025. To start out with, I just had to do it. I had to include an Agatha Christie. I read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. I read this pretty early on in the year, but this is genuinely one of my favorite Agatha Christie books that I've read. I was gobsmacked, absolutely gobsmacked. I could not believe the ending. This was a really good book, very interesting book. Highly recommend if you're looking to get into Agatha Christie. This is a great option. I thoroughly enjoyed Animal Farm, and I was actually not entirely expecting me to enjoy it this much. I was kind of thinking about maybe DNFing this book. It just at first and it's not long at all, but by the end of it, I really enjoyed this book, and I'm putting it in here not quite as much for the enjoyment of it, even though I did enjoy this book. I just think it's such a profound book and so interesting the way that it was told. If you don't know, Animal Farm is a satire about communism told with the analogy of a farm and farm animals and these pigs who are rising to power. I know explaining it sounds kind of wild, but it was very interesting and honestly really cool the way that they told the story that way. As I said, I really got into library reading in 2025, and one of the books that I picked up relatively early on in the year was That's Not a Thing. And this book kind of came out of nowhere. It was just a random book that I saw at the library. I hadn't heard anybody talk about it, still really never hear people talk about this book. And it wasn't an amazing book, but I think just because I had never heard about it, it has stuck with me throughout the year. This book is a love triangle, and basically one of our main male characters is really suffering through a lot, and he is a chef who's kind of trying to grow, but he's just, despite his success, he is really struggling with some illness type stuff, and it's just, there's a lot of emotion and a lot of heartache in this story, and I was not expecting to enjoy it as much as I did, but like I said, it just kind of came out of nowhere and was a great read. Another library book that I read that is one of my favorite books probably of all time is Where the Crawdads Sing. This book is about our marsh girl. She lives in the marsh. She doesn't really have a family. She's very wary of all humans. She's very closed off from people, and there's a lot of rumors that go on about her, and she kind of tries to find love, and some of that leads to some pretty tough stuff, and she's really done wrong by a lot of people, but seeing those people that do treat her well and just love her and take care of her, that was really cool, and this book is definitely a must read. I read Sunrise on the Reaping in 2025, and that book was definitely a great read. It was sad and tragic, but it was great. I will say I didn't like it as much as the other books. I think I liked The Hunger Games and Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes more than this one, but it was still an enjoyable read. Still thoroughly enjoyed my time, and I am looking forward to watching the movie. Next book is My Cousin Rachel. I read Rebecca by the same author in 2024, and I love that book. Literally one of my favorite books of all time. So I decided to give this book a go and see how it was, and sure enough, I thoroughly enjoyed my time. We are following our main character, Philip, and he has a cousin who went away to Italy and married this girl named Rachel, and then he died from an illness. Rachel then comes to England and stays with Philip, and he kind of starts to get a little bit interested in Rachel, and things kind of spiral from there. I don't want to talk too much about this book because it is one of those where suspense is kind of part of the enjoyment of it, but it was definitely kind of a disturbing book. Like, you know something is off, and I kind of love it when books are like that. So this book was definitely one of my favorite books in 2025. In, I believe it was like February or something, I got another library book, and that is Happy Place by Emily Henry. This is my first Emily Henry book. Again, I just grabbed it at the library and I read it, and then I bought all of her books and I read all of her books and did a reread of this book, and now you could say that I'm an Emily Henry fan. I thoroughly enjoy her books, not only just this one, but honestly all of her books. I love that while there is romance and there's definitely that relationship aspect, there is so much more. There's so much more emotion. All of her characters are going through something and have real life problems, and they're dealing with something outside of the relationship. And I really love when our characters kind of just go through life, because that's what it is. I mean, life is not always great, and when I get to read about characters who are going through similar things that I'm going through, or just in general kind of struggling and working through that, I love reading about that. So because of that, Emily Henry honestly has become one of my favorite authors, and definitely so far my favorite romance author. She's so good at what she does, and I love the stories that she tells. Another new author that I read this year was Stephen King, and I picked up Fairy Tale. This book is kind of disturbing, kind of dark telling of a fairy tale. In this book, we're following, I forgot his name, Charlie. We're following Charlie, and he kind of befriends this curmudgeonly old man, and this guy has a dog, and Charlie just gets to know them and becomes friends with them, and that then leads to him finding a hidden world in the guy's backyard. Charlie then goes to that hidden world and has to basically kind of try to figure out how to save the day for them. So basically, typical fairy tale. However, I really did enjoy it. I like how it felt kind of more like an adult fairy tale and not as much a little kid version. I like how there was, again, struggle. Our character faces pain and is unsure of himself, and I really appreciated that in this book. Another Stephen King book that I read this year, this was actually the first Stephen King book that I read, and that's Billy Summers. This book I really, really loved. I actually gave this book 5 stars, one of my few 5 stars of the year. And we are following our main character, Billy, who is an assassin, but he wants to retire. He wants to live more of a quiet, chill life. He's a little bit unsure about the morals of assassinating people, and he has one final job, and then he's done, and it ends up being quite the job. It just is a spiral of chaos, but I really loved this book. It was a very gripping story. I also picked up my first Kristen Hanna book this year, and that is The Nightingale. This book, I cannot even begin. Genuinely one of my favorite books of all time. There were some tears, I'll be honest, and I also gave this book 5 stars. It's just incredible. We are following 2 sisters, and they are in France in World War II, I believe, and they obviously are facing a lot. They are in the midst of war. We're watching these 2 sisters make very different choices in the midst of war, and both of them are really trying. They're good people, but they're taking very different approaches to that. And obviously in war, there's so many tough choices, so many tough options. There's not always a better one. And watching them suffer and really try hard, really work through their struggles. That was so cool. I cried at this book. It is so sad, but so beautiful. And just the relationships and the love here, it was incredible. A little while after I read The Nightingale, I picked up The Great Alone, also by Kristen Hanna. I, again, thoroughly enjoyed this book. I've only ever read 2 Kristen Hanna books, The Nightingale and this one, but I'm very excited to get into more of her books because she knows how to write my kind of story. I love a sad book, and this definitely was that. We are following, what's her name? Lenny, I think? Yes, Lenny, and her family is moving to Alaska. They're trying to find a new life. They're pretty poor, and life is just not going well for them. So they decide to pack it up and move north. And it's her life then in Alaska and struggling with some family stuff and just some relationship stuff, and watching her live her life. Again, it's a sad, rough life, but it's so beautiful. And I think Kristen Hanna does that very well, just based on the few books that I've read of her. She writes very sad novels, but there's always that hope and that love, and I really love that. So this book also made me cry, and I love that about a book. One book that I recently read, which I really enjoyed, was A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Obviously, I read this over Christmas, and I think the reason why I enjoyed it so much was because it was like over Christmas, but it really is such a good book, and I'm glad that I've read it. Obviously, I kind of know the story already, but actually reading his words was so cool, and I think the message is really awesome. For those who don't know, we're following Scrooge, who is obviously Scrooge. Everybody knows who that is. And the 3 spirits visit him, Christmas past, Christmas present, and Christmas future, and kind of just show Scrooge that, like, hey, let's get our act together. Let's stop being a grump and try to spread joy. And I thought that was so cool because Christmas obviously can be a time of distraction, and we can be so caught up in just all the going, all the doing, all the things that we have to get done before the big day. But I think it's very valuable to let it be a peaceful time as well. And I think that book really captured that message. To wrap it up, I can't technically talk about this book, but I'm currently reading Turtles All the Way Down. I am maybe 60% through, and so far, again, I can't say for sure, but I'm really enjoying this book. It is kind of giving me 5-star feels, and I'm very excited to see where it ends. Again, it could have a terrible ending. I will talk about this more in my December, November reading wrap up, but so far, I'm thoroughly enjoying this book, and I'm thinking this is going to be maybe my last 5-star of 2025. All right, those were my favorite reads in 2025, the books that really stuck with me throughout the year and likely through the coming years. Like I said, had a great reading year. I thoroughly enjoyed my reading time, really loved delving into all of these books, and I'm very excited to see where 2026 leads, to see what new and exciting books that I find that year. Wishing you all the best 2026.